My name is Sarah Hayes, and I'm 32 years old. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting in a hospital room watching my mother take her final breaths, while my stepfamily whispered behind me about how I didn't belong there. My stepbrother Marcus stood up and announced to the entire room, "She's just here for the inheritance money." Mom already told us she's cutting her out completely. The nurses looked uncomfortable. The other family members nodded in agreement. I felt completely alone, devastated, and humiliated. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened 48 hours later, when my mother's lawyer called an emergency family meeting. Before I tell you what Mom's secret recording revealed, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because what you're about to hear will change everything you think you know about family, betrayal, and the power of a mother's love from beyond the grave. Let me take you back to where this all began. My biological father died when I was 6 years old. My mother, Elena, was devastated, but determined to give me the best life possible. She worked 3 jobs cleaning offices at night, tutoring kids, after school, and working weekends at a local grocery store just to keep our tiny apartment and put food on the table. I still remember those early years so vividly. Mom would come home exhausted at 11 p.m., but she'd still sit with me to help with homework. "Education is your key to freedom, Sarah," she'd say in her gentle accent. She'd immigrated from the Philippines when she was 18, and despite speaking perfect English, she never lost that musical quality to her voice that made even the hardest days feel manageable. When I was 10, Mom met David at the grocery store where she worked. He was recently divorced with 2 teenage children, Marcus, who was 17, and Rebecca, who was 15. David seemed like a godsend. He was kind to me, bought me books, and most importantly, he made my mother smile again. The first red flag should have been how Marcus and Rebecca treated me from day one. I was just a 10-year-old kid excited to have older siblings, but they made it clear I was an outsider. "You're not our real sister," Marcus would hiss when the adults weren't listening. "Dad just feels sorry for your mom." Rebecca was subtler, but equally cruel. She'd invite me to play with her and her friends, then systematically exclude me once. I got comfortable. "Oh, this game is only for kids who have real dads," she'd say casually, knowing exactly how to twist a knife. But here's the thing, they were angels when Mom and David were around. Perfect, loving, welcoming stepchildren who just adored their new little sister. It was psychological warfare, and I was 10 years old. Mom and David got married when I was 12. The wedding was beautiful, and for one shining day, I actually believed we were becoming a real family. David legally adopted me, changing my last name from Rivera to Hayes Martin. "Now we're all one family," he announced at the reception, and I cried tears of joy. What I didn't realize was that this adoption would later become the weapon they'd use to destroy me. The first few years of marriage were actually good. David worked in construction management and made decent money. Combined with Mom's income, we were finally financially stable. We moved to a bigger house in a better neighborhood. I got my own room for the first time in my life. But as Marcus and Rebecca got older, their resentment toward me intensified. Marcus was struggling in college, partying too much, barely passing his classes. Rebecca was dating a guy David hated and acting out constantly. Meanwhile, I was excelling in school, getting straight A's, winning academic awards. "Why can't you be more like Sarah?" David would ask them during family dinners, and I'd see the hatred flash in their eyes. I didn't want to be held up as the good example. I just wanted to belong. The real turning point came when I was 16. I had been accepted to a prestigious summer program for gifted students at a nearby university. It was a huge honor, but it also cost $3,000. Mom and David had been saving for months to make it happen. 3 days before the program started, Marcus totaled his car in a drunk driving accident. Nobody was hurt, thank God, but the car was destroyed, and his insurance rates skyrocketed. Suddenly, that $3,000 had to go toward getting him a replacement vehicle. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," Mom said, tears in her eyes as she told me I couldn't attend the program. Family has to come first. Marcus needs a car to get to work. Except Marcus didn't have a job. He'd been fired from his part-time gig at a restaurant 2 weeks earlier for showing up drunk. But I was 16, and I accepted that family meant sacrifice. I gave up my spot in the program and watched my $3,000 turn into a used Honda Civic that Marcus promptly filled with empty beer cans. This pattern continued throughout my high school years. Every time I had an opportunity to bait team trips, college prep courses, even my senior prom dress, something would happen to Marcus or Rebecca that required the family's financial resources. And I always came second, but I was determined not to let this define me. I worked part-time jobs throughout high school, saved every penny, and applied for scholarships like my life depended on it. When I graduated valedictorian, I had a full ride to the University of California, Berkeley. Mom cried at my graduation, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe she was proud of me, not just managing the family crisis of the week. "I'm so proud of you, Mia," she whispered in my ear during the ceremony. "You're going to do amazing things." College was my escape. For 4 years, I was away from the toxic family dynamics, away from Marcus's drinking and Rebecca's drama, away from feeling like I had to justify my existence every single day. I thrived academically, made genuine friends, and even fell in love with a wonderful guy named James. I majored in biomedical engineering with a minor in business. I wasn't just smart, I was driven. I wanted to create something meaningful, to help people, to make my mother proud. I graduated summa cum laude and was accepted into a prestigious graduate program. But here's where the story gets complicated. During my senior year of college, David was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. He was only 52, and the progression was rapid and devastating. Mom had to quit her job to become his full-time caregiver. Suddenly, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. Marcus and Rebecca, who had been living their own lives and barely staying in touch, suddenly became very concerned about family affairs. They both moved back home to help with David's care. At first, I was genuinely touched. Maybe this crisis would bring us together as a family. Maybe adversity would help us all grow up and put aside our petty differences. I was so naive. What I didn't realize was that Marcus and Rebecca weren't there to help with David's care. They were there to position themselves for what came next. David's condition deteriorated quickly, and within 2 years, he needed round-the-clock care. The medical bills were astronomical, and Mom was burning through their savings at an alarming rate. I was in my first year of graduate school, but I offered to take a leave of absence to come home and help. "Absolutely not," Mom said firmly. "Your education is too important. We'll figure this out." "We'll figure this out" apparently meant that Marcus and Rebecca would move into the house rent-free while I continued to pay for my own housing and education. They claimed they were sacrificing their own careers to help with David's care. But from what I could see during my visits home, Mom was still doing 90% of the caregiving while they enjoyed free room and board. During one particularly difficult visit, I found Mom exhausted and overwhelmed. David had been having a rough week, barely recognizing anyone, and the stress was taking a visible toll on her health. "Mom, you need help," I said. "Real help. Have you looked into professional care services? Or maybe a specialized facility?" "We can't afford it," she said quietly. "Even with David's insurance, the costs are ... She trailed off, looking defeated. "What about Marcus and Rebecca? They're living here rent-free. Surely they can contribute financially." Mom looked uncomfortable. "They're helping in other ways." "Sarah, Rebecca drives David to his appointments, and Marcus handles all the paperwork with the insurance company." What I learned later was that Marcus had been handling a lot more than just paperwork. He convinced Mom to let him take over the family finances, ostensibly to make things easier for her. He'd helped her set up online banking, organized all the bills, even convinced her to give him power of attorney just in case something happens. "It's just a precaution," he told her. "You're so stressed with Dad's care. Let me handle the financial stuff so you can focus on what's important." It seemed reasonable. It seemed helpful. It was actually the beginning of a carefully orchestrated plan that would take me years to fully understand. David passed away when I was in my second year of graduate school. The funeral was heartbreaking, but I was struck by how Marcus and Rebecca seemed to be handling all the arrangements. They spoke to the funeral director, organized the service, even wrote the obituary. Mom seemed to be in shock, barely participating in the planning. "It's grief," Rebecca explained to concerned family friends. "Mom's taking it really hard." Marcus: "And I are just trying to take care of everything so she doesn't have to worry about the details." Again, it seemed reasonable. It seemed caring. I was grateful that they were stepping up when Mom needed them most. After the funeral, I assumed Marcus and Rebecca would move on with their lives, maybe get their own places again. Instead, they convinced Mom that she needed them more than ever. "You've never lived alone," Rebecca pointed out. "And this house is so big. Wouldn't it be nice to have family around? Plus, the mortgage is still pretty steep," Marcus added. "If we're all contributing, it makes financial sense." Except they weren't contributing. I discovered this during a conversation with Mom about 6 months after David's death. She mentioned being worried about making the mortgage payment, and I was confused. "But aren't Marcus and Rebecca helping with expenses?" I asked. "Well, they help in other ways," Mom said vaguely. "Marcus is looking for work, and Rebecca's job at the boutique doesn't pay very much." I did some quick math in my head. David's life insurance payout should have been substantial enough to pay off most of the mortgage. His pension and Social Security benefits should have provided Mom with a comfortable income. Something didn't add up. "Mom, can I ask about the life insurance money? I thought David had a pretty good policy through his job." "Oh, well, there were some complications with that," she said, looking uncomfortable. "Marcus helped me navigate all the paperwork. The insurance company was being difficult, and then there were some outstanding debts we didn't know about." Her explanation was vague and confusing, but I didn't want to press the issue. I was busy with my graduate research, and I trusted that Marcus was handling things properly. After all, he was her stepson, not some stranger. Surely he had her best interests at heart. This was my second major mistake. Over the next 2 years, I watched my mother's financial situation steadily deteriorate. The woman who had worked 3 jobs to support us when I was young was now struggling to pay basic bills. She started mentioning having to choose between medications and groceries, between heating the house and paying the water bill. Meanwhile, Marcus had somehow found the money to lease a brand new BMW. Rebecca was posting Instagram photos from expensive vacations with her boyfriend. And they were both still living in Mom's house, claiming they were there to help her. When I confronted Mom about the disconnect between their lifestyle and her financial struggles, she became defensive. "They're adults, Sarah. They work hard for their money. Just because I'm having a tough time doesn't mean they should suffer." "But Mom, you're their stepmother. David raised them. Doesn't that create some obligation to help you when you're struggling?" "Family is complicated," she said, using a phrase that would become her go-to response whenever I questioned the arrangement. "You wouldn't understand because you've been away for so long." That cut deep. The implication that I was somehow less family because I pursued my education, because I built a life outside of this dysfunction, was devastating. It was also completely unfair. I've been offering to help financially, but Mom always insisted she was fine, that she didn't want to burden me. I graduated with my master's degree and landed a fantastic job with a biotech company in San Francisco. The salary was more than I'd ever imagined making, and my first instinct was to help Mom get back on her feet financially. I called her with the good news about my job and immediately offered to send money to help with her expenses. "That's very sweet of you, Mia," she said, "but I don't want to take your money. You've worked so hard for that job." You should enjoy it. Mom, this isn't about taking my money. This is about family. You sacrificed so much for my education. Let me help you now. I appreciate the offer, but Marcus and Rebecca would feel terrible if they thought I needed money from you. They're already sensitive about not being able to contribute more. Sensitive about not being able to contribute more. They weren't contributing anything. But somehow, my desire to help was being framed as potentially hurtful to their feelings. This was the beginning of the gaslighting campaign that would define the next several years of my relationship with my family. Moving to San Francisco for my new job felt like both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, I was finally launching my career and building the life I'd always dreamed of. On the other hand, I felt like I was abandoning my mother when she needed me most. I tried to stay closely connected, calling Mom every week, visiting whenever I could manage the time off. But with each visit, I noticed changes that troubled me deeply. Mom seemed more isolated than ever. She'd always been social, with friends from work and church, but now she rarely left the house. When I asked about her friends, she'd make vague comments about being too busy or too tired to maintain relationships. I just don't have much in common with them anymore, she'd say. They're all still married, still have their husbands. I feel like a third wheel. This broke my heart, but it also didn't ring true. Mom had always been confident and social. She'd never been the type to withdraw from friendships just because her circumstances had changed. What I didn't realize was that Marcus and Rebecca were systematically isolating her from her support network. They convinced her that her friends were judging her financial situation, that they were gossiping about her struggles, that she'd be embarrassed if people knew how difficult things had become. Mrs. Rodriguez from church called again, Rebecca would say. She was asking all these personal questions about your finances. I think she's just being nosy. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life right now. Or Marcus would intercept calls and messages. That was your friend Maria calling about the ladies' lunch group. I told her you weren't feeling up to it. You need to focus on taking care of yourself, not worrying about social obligations. Slowly but surely, they created a bubble around Mom where they controlled almost all of her social interactions. They became her primary source of information about the outside world, her main emotional support system, and eventually, her only family connection that mattered. I was completely unaware of this systematic isolation because I was living 400 miles away and only seeing the surface level during my visits. The financial manipulation was equally subtle and devastating. Marcus had convinced Mom that he was protecting her from making poor financial decisions in her grief. He'd taken over not just bill paying, but all investment decisions, insurance claims, and even daily spending choices. Mom gets overwhelmed by all the paperwork. He'd explain to anyone who asked, "It's better if I handle the complicated stuff and just let her focus on her health and well-being." Sounds reasonable, right? Sounds caring and protective. What was actually happening was financial abuse on a massive scale. Marcus had gradually gained access to all of Mom's accounts. He convinced her to consolidate her banking for simplicity, moving everything to a single bank where he was listed as a joint account holder. He'd helped her organize her important documents by moving them all to a safety deposit box that he controlled. He'd even convinced her to update her insurance policies and beneficiaries to make sure everything was current. Meanwhile, he was systematically draining her resources. Small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there, always with reasonable explanations. I picked up groceries for you, Mom, but I forgot to ask for cash. I'll just take it from the account and pay you back. The house needed some repairs, and I had to put it on my credit card. Can I transfer the money to pay it off? Over time, the amounts got larger and the explanations got vaguer. But by then, Mom was so dependent on Marcus for all financial management that she'd lost track of what was normal and what wasn't. Rebecca's role was different, but equally destructive. She positioned herself as Mom's emotional caretaker and confidant. She was the one who listened to Mom's worries, who provided comfort during difficult days, who seemed to understand Mom's emotional needs better than anyone else. Sarah means, well, Rebecca would say, but she doesn't really understand what you're going through. She's never been married, never lost a spouse. She can't relate to your experience the way I can. Or, it must be hard when Sarah calls with all her career success stories. I know you're proud of her, but it probably makes you feel even worse about your own situation. Rebecca was brilliant at planting seeds of doubt about my motives and creating emotional distance between Mom and me. She'd take genuine concerns I'd express and twist them into evidence that I was judging Mom or didn't understand her struggles. If I asked about Mom's health, Rebecca would frame it as me being critical. Sarah thinks you're not taking good enough care of yourself. If I offered financial help, Rebecca would frame it as me being condescending. Sarah thinks you can't manage your own money. If I suggested social activities or encouraged Mom to reconnect with friends, Rebecca would frame it as me not understanding her grief. Sarah thinks you should just get over David's death and move on. Every positive intention I had was filtered through Rebecca's manipulation and presented to Mom as evidence that I didn't really understand or care about her well-being. The most insidious part was how they created a narrative where they were the only ones who truly loved and supported Mom. They were the ones making sacrifices, living in the same house, dealing with day-to-day challenges. I was the distant daughter who only showed up occasionally with money and advice. We're here every day, Marcus would say. We see what Mom really needs. Sarah means well, but she doesn't understand the reality of the situation. This narrative was reinforced constantly. Mom heard it so often that she began to internalize it and even repeat it back to me during our conversations. You're so busy with your career, she'd say. I don't want to burden you with my problems. Marcus and Rebecca understand what I'm going through because they're here. The implications were clear. I was a successful but disconnected daughter, while they were the devoted children who'd sacrificed their own lives to care for her. It was masterful psychological manipulation. And it worked perfectly. By the time I realized what was happening, they'd created a family dynamic where I was the outsider and they were the insiders, where my attempts to help were seen as interference and their control was seen as care. Where Mom trusted them completely and questioned my motives constantly, but I was about to discover that their manipulation went far beyond what I could have imagined. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was in a meeting at work when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Is this Sarah Hayes Martin? The voice was professional, clinical. Yes. Who is this? This is Dr. Patricia Valdez from UCSF Medical Center. I'm calling about your mother, Elena Hayes Martin. She's been admitted to our emergency department. My heart stopped. What happened? Is she okay? She's stable now, but she was brought in by ambulance this morning with chest pains and difficulty breathing. We're running tests, but she's asking for you. I was on the road within an hour, driving the 400 miles from San Francisco to Los Angeles in a panic. I kept calling Mom's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried calling Marcus and Rebecca, but neither answered. When I finally arrived at the hospital, I found Mom in the cardiac ICU. She looked so small and frail in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and 4 lines, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. Mia, she whispered, reaching for my hand. You came. Of course I came. How are you feeling? What did the doctors say? It's not good, she said quietly. My heart, it's failing. They say it's been happening for a while, but I didn't want to worry anyone. I felt tears welling up. Why didn't you tell me? I would have come immediately. I didn't want to interrupt your life, she said. You're doing so well. I'm so proud of you. Mom, your health is more important than my career. You should have called me. She squeezed my hand weakly. I know, baby. I should have called you about a lot of things. Before I could ask what she meant, Marcus and Rebecca burst into the room. "Sarah?" Rebecca said, her voice loud and dramatic. "Oh my God, we didn't know you were coming. We would have picked you up from the airport." "I drove," I said shortly. "Where were you two when Mom was admitted?" "We were handling the insurance paperwork," Marcus said smoothly. "Someone had to make sure the hospital had all the right information. I found out later that they'd actually been at Marcus's girlfriend's house when the paramedics arrived. A neighbor had called 911 when they saw Mom collapse in her front yard. Marcus and Rebecca didn't even know she'd been hospitalized until the hospital called them 3 hours later. But in the moment, their explanation seemed reasonable, and I was too focused on Mom's condition to question it further. Over the next few days, I barely left Mom's bedside. The doctors were cautiously optimistic her heart was damaged. But with medication and lifestyle changes, she might have several good. Years ahead of her, Marcus and Rebecca, however, seemed to be preparing for the worst. "We should probably talk about Mom's wishes," Rebecca said on day 3, pulling me aside in the hospital hallway. "You know, in case ... double quotes, she's going to be fine," I said firmly. "The doctors said the damage isn't as severe as they first thought. But we should be prepared," Marcus added. "Mom's been talking about this for months. She's worried about being a burden, about her medical bills bankrupting the family." This was the first I'd heard of Mom having these conversations. But I've been living far away. It was possible they knew things I didn't. "What kind of wishes?" I asked. "She doesn't want aggressive treatment if her quality of life is going to be poor," Rebecca said. "She's seen what prolonged illness can do to a family. She went through it, David. She doesn't want to put us through that again." "She specifically mentioned not wanting to be kept alive on machines," Marcus added. "She wants to go peacefully, with dignity." These were all reasonable things for someone to discuss with their family. But something felt off about the timing and the way they were presenting it. Mom had never been one to give up easily. And just that morning she'd been talking about wanting to see me get married, to meet her future grandchildren. "Has she put any of this in writing?" I asked. "We've been helping her get her affairs in order," Marcus said. "Her living will, her regular will, all that stuff." She wanted to make sure everything was clear so there wouldn't be any confusion later. "I'd like to see those documents," I said. Marcus and Rebecca exchanged a look. "Of course," Rebecca said. "They're at the house. We can show you when we get home." But when Mom was discharged a week later, there was always a reason why I couldn't see the documents. They were at the lawyer's office. They were in the safety deposit box. They were being updated with some new information. And Mom seemed oddly detached from these conversations. When I'd ask her directly about her wishes, she'd give vague answers and defer to Marcus and Rebecca. "They've been helping me with all of this," she'd say. "They understand the legal stuff better than I do." This bothered me, but I didn't know how to push back without seeming like I was trying to take control or questioning Mom's autonomy. Over the next few months, Mom's health seemed to stabilize, but she became increasingly frail and dependent. She needed help with grocery shopping, with housework, with managing her medications. Marcus and Rebecca positioned themselves as her primary caregivers, though from what I could observe during my visits, they were doing the bare minimum. House was often messy. The refrigerator was frequently empty. Mom would mention having missed doctor's appointments or having run out of medication. But Marcus and Rebecca always had explanations. "Mom's becoming forgetful," they'd say. "She tells us she doesn't need groceries, then complains there's no food. She says she doesn't want to go to her doctor's appointments, then blames us when she misses them." They were positioning Mom as increasingly incompetent while positioning themselves as patient, long-suffering caregivers. And I was too far away, too infrequent a visitor, to challenge this narrative effectively. But then came September, and everything changed. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize on a Friday afternoon. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Is this Sarah Hayes Martin?" "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Dr. Lisa Martinez. I'm a social worker at Cedar-Sinai Medical Center." "You're..." Mother was brought to our emergency department yesterday. My blood went cold. What happened? Is she okay? She's stable, but she was found unconscious in her home by a neighbor. We're running tests, but I'm calling because your mother has been asking for you specifically, and she seems very distressed about something. I'm on my way, I said, already grabbing my car keys. Ms. Hayes Martin, before you come, I need to ask you something. Are you aware of your mother's current living situation and care arrangements? Yes, she lives with my stepbrother and stepsister. They've been taking care of her since my stepfather passed away. There was a pause. I see. When you arrive, please. Ask to speak with me directly. There are some concerns I need to discuss with you. The drive to Los Angeles felt endless. I kept calling Marcus and Rebecca, but neither answered their phones. I tried calling the house phone, but it just rang and rang. When I arrived at the hospital, I found Mom in a regular room, not the ICU. She was awake but looked terrible, thin, and visibly distressed. "Sarah," she said when she saw me, tears immediately streaming down her face. "I'm so glad you're here. I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Mom?" "What happened?" She looked around nervously, as if checking to make sure we were alone. I think Marcus and Rebecca are trying to hurt me. I felt like I've been punched in the stomach." "What do you mean?" "They've been giving me pills that make me sleepy and confused. They told me they're for my heart, but when I asked the doctor here about them, he said he'd never prescribed them." "What pills?" "I don't know what they are. Marcus handles all my medications. But Sarah, I've been feeling so strange lately. Dizzy, confused, like I'm in a fog all the time. And yesterday, before I collapsed, I heard them talking about me in the kitchen." "What did you hear?" "Rebecca was saying something about how I probably wouldn't last much longer, and Marcus said something about speeding things up because they needed to finalize everything soon." My mind was racing. "Mom, have you told the doctors about this?" "I tried to, but they think I'm confused because of my condition. And Marcus and Rebecca told them I've been having paranoid thoughts lately, that I sometimes imagine things that aren't real. The gaslighting have been so complete that even medical professionals were dismissing Mom's concerns as symptoms of her illness." "Mom, I believe you. I'm going to figure out what's happening." At that moment, Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Hayes Martin, could I speak with you privately?" We stepped into a small consultation room down the hall. Dr. Martinez closed the door and looked at me seriously. "I need to be direct with you," she said. "We found some concerning things in your mother's blood work. She has elevated levels of several medications that don't match her prescribed regimen." "What kind of medications?" "Sedatives, primarily. Drugs that would cause confusion, drowsiness, and disorientation. She also shows signs of nutritional deficiency and dehydration that are consistent with neglect rather than medical illness." "Are you saying someone is drugging her?" "I'm saying that your mother's current symptoms are not consistent with her diagnosed conditions. They're consistent with medication overdose and inadequate care. Her stepchildren are supposed to be taking care of her. They live in her house. They manage her medications, ... double quotes, Dr. Martinez nodded grimly. Adult Protective Services will need to investigate this situation. In the meantime, your mother should return to that house until we understand what's happening." That night, I sat with Mom and listened as she told me things that made my blood boil. How Marcus had been giving her extra pills to help her sleep better. How Rebecca had been telling her friends and neighbors that Mom was becoming senile and couldn't be trusted to make her own decisions. How they'd been gradually isolating her from anyone who might question their version of events. "I started to realize something was wrong a few weeks ago," Mom said. "I found some papers in Marcus's room that I didn't understand, legal documents with my name on them. When I asked him about them, he got angry and told me I was being paranoid." "What kind of legal documents?" "I don't know. Something about power. Of attorney, maybe, and something about changing my will. But Sarah, I never agreed to change my will. I felt sick to my stomach. Mom, do you remember signing anything recently? Any papers that Marcus or Rebecca brought to you? Sometimes they bring me papers to sign. Bills, they say. Or insurance forms. I usually just sign them because they tell me it's routine stuff. But now I'm wondering. Mom, I think they've been manipulating you for a long time. The financial problems, the isolation from your friends, even your health issues, I think they've been orchestrating all of it. She looked at me with such sadness. I was starting to suspect, but I didn't want to believe it. They're David's children. He loved them so much. How could they do this to me? Because they're not good people, Mom, and they've been planning this for a long time. What I discovered over the next few days was even worse than I'd imagined. I took emergency leave from work and stayed in Los Angeles to investigate what had been happening to my mother. What I found was a sophisticated, long-term plan to steal everything she had and potentially kill her in the process. The first breakthrough came when I hired a private investigator named Janet Morrison. Janet specialized in elder abuse cases and knew exactly what to look for. This is a classic case, she told me after reviewing the basic facts. Adult children gradually gaining control over an elderly parent's finances and medical care, then systematically draining their resources while making it look like natural decline. The drugging is more extreme than usual, but not unheard of. Janet's investigation revealed the full scope of the fraud. Over the past 3 years, Marcus had transferred over $300,000 from Mom's accounts to his own. He'd done this through a series of small transfers and payments to fake companies he created. He'd also taken out credit cards in Mom's name and run up over $50,000 in debt. Rebecca's role was equally sinister. She'd been forging Mom's signature on legal documents, including a new will that left everything to Marcus and Rebecca and specifically excluded me. She'd also been intercepting mail and filtering Mom's communications to prevent her from seeking help. But the most shocking discovery was the medication scheme. Marcus had been buying prescription medications online and giving them to Mom without her knowledge. The pills were mixed in with her legitimate medications, making it impossible for her to know what she was actually taking. The goal was probably to make her appear increasingly incompetent, Janet explained. If she seemed confused and paranoid, no one would believe her if she tried to report what was happening. Eventually, they could have her declared incompetent and gain complete control over her assets. And if she died from the medication overdose, even better from their perspective. They inherit everything, and there's no one left to question their story. The evidence was overwhelming, but prosecuting would be complicated. Mom had signed documents while under the influence of drugs, which meant she couldn't consent to the transactions. But proving coercion in court would require extensive documentation and testimony. Meanwhile, Marcus and Rebecca were not going. Quietly, when they realized Mom wasn't coming home from the hospital and that I was investigating their activities, they went on the offensive. They filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services claiming that I was trying to kidnap Mom and steal her money. They told anyone who would listen that I'd been absent for years and was now trying to swoop in and take advantage of Mom's illness. Sarah abandoned her mother for years, Rebecca told the APS investigator. Now she's suddenly back, trying to turn Mom against us and control her finances. We've been here every day, sacrificing our own lives to take care of her. Marcus was even more calculated in his manipulation. He provided apps with financial records showing how much money he'd supposedly spent on Mom's care, all fabricated. Of course, he showed them the legal documents Mom had signed, giving him power of attorney. He even had character witnesses, neighbors who'd only heard his version of events. Look, I understand Sarah is upset, he told the investigator with practiced sincerity. She feels guilty for not being around, and now she's looking for someone to blame. But we've been Mom's primary caregivers for years. We know what's best for her. The APS investigation was a nightmare. I had to prove that I wasn't the predatory daughter trying to exploit my sick mother, while simultaneously building a case that her trusted caregivers were actually trying to kill her. Fortunately, the medical evidence was on our side. Dr. Martinez and the hospital team documented everything: the unexplained medications in Mom's system, the signs of neglect, her dramatic improvement once she was away from Marcus and Rebecca's care. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source: Mom herself. While staying in a temporary care facility during the investigation, Mom began to recover her mental clarity as the drugs left her system. And with that clarity came memories and evidence. "Sarah," she said during one of my visits, "I remembered something. There's a recorder." "What do you mean?" "David gave me a small digital recorder years ago when his memory started failing. He wanted me to record our conversations so he could listen to them later and remember. I forgot about it after he died, but I think I still have it." "Where is it?" "Hidden in my jewelry box. I used to record myself sometimes, just talking about my day or my feelings. It helped me process everything that was happening." My heart started racing. "Mom, when was the last time you used it?" "I'm not sure. Maybe a few weeks before I went to the hospital." I was feeling so confused and scared, and I started recording myself to try to make sense of what was happening. If Mom had recorded her thoughts during the period when Marcus and Rebecca were drugging her, it could provide crucial evidence of their manipulation and her true mental state. Getting access to the recorder required a court order, since the house was now considered a crime scene. But Janet's contacts in law enforcement helped expedite the process. When we finally retrieved the device from Mom's jewelry box, we found over 6 hours of recordings spanning the past 8 months. What we heard was devastating and heartbreaking. In the early recordings, Mom sounded like herself, articulate, thoughtful, expressing normal concerns about her health and finances. But as the months progressed, her speech became increasingly slurred and confused. She talked about feeling dizzy, about memory problems, about being afraid but not understanding why. But the most damning recordings came from the final weeks before her hospitalization. In these, Mom's speech was severely impaired, but her observations were chillingly accurate. I think Marcus is giving me something that makes me sleepy. The pills look different than what the doctor gave me, but he says they're the same. I tried to call Sarah yesterday, but Marcus said I already talked to her and forgot. But I don't think I did. I think he's lying to me." In another recording, Rebecca told Mrs. Rodriguez that I'm getting senile, but I'm not senile. I'm just foggy. Everything feels foggy. They keep telling me I'm forgetting things, but I think they're making me forget things. And most chilling of all, a recording from just days before her collapse. I heard them talking in the kitchen. Rebecca said something about not much longer now, and Marcus said good, because I'm tired of waiting. I think they want me to die. I think they're trying to make me die. The recordings were legally admissible and provided clear evidence of Mom's mental state throughout the period of abuse. They showed that even while heavily drugged, she was aware that something was wrong and was trying to document it. With this evidence, the criminal case against Marcus and Rebecca moved forward quickly. They were arrested on charges of elder abuse, financial exploitation, drugging without consent, and attempted murder. But their legal troubles were just the beginning of their downfall. While the criminal case was proceeding, we still had to deal with the forged will and the financial fraud. This is where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. Mom's original attorney, Robert Kim, had been handling her legal affairs for over 20 years. When Marcus and Rebecca took over Mom's care, they convinced her to switch to a new lawyer, someone they claimed was more affordable and easier to work with. The new lawyer, it turned out, was in on the scheme. He'd helped create the fraudulent documents and had been paid handsomely for his cooperation. But when he realized that criminal charges were being filed, he panicked and contacted Robert Kim to confess his involvement. "Your mother never wanted to change her will," Robert told me during our meeting. The last time we spoke, about a year before David died, she specifically told me that she wanted everything to go to you. She said Marcus and Rebecca were David's responsibility, but you were her daughter, and she wanted to make sure you were taken care of. So the will leaving everything to Marcus and Rebecca ... completely fraudulent. Forged signatures, fake witnesses, backdating, the works. But Sarah, there's something else you need to know. Robert pulled out a thick manila envelope from his desk drawer. Your mother came to see me about 6 months ago. She was ... different, confused, disoriented. But she had moments of clarity, and during one of those moments, she gave me this. Inside the envelope was a USB drive and a handwritten note in Mom's shaky handwriting. For Sarah, in case something happens to me. The truth about Marcus and Rebecca. She said she'd been recording conversations in her house, Robert continued. She was scared and didn't know who else to trust. She made me promise to give this to you if anything happened to her. With trembling hands, I plugged the USB drive into Robert's computer. What we found was a collection of audio files spanning several months, conversations Mom had secretly recorded throughout her house. The first few recordings were relatively innocuous. Marcus and Rebecca discussing household matters, complaining about Mom's health problems, making plans for dinner. But as the files progressed chronologically, their true nature became apparent. In one recording from about 4 months before Mom's hospitalization, we heard Marcus and Rebecca discussing their financial situation. Marcus, we need to speed this up. I'm bleeding money on that BMW lease, and if she lives another 5 years, there won't be anything left to inherit. Rebecca, the pills are working. She's getting more confused every week. Dr. Patterson said we could probably get her declared incompetent within a few months. Marcus, what about Sarah? She's been calling more often lately. Rebecca, I've been screening her calls. Mom thinks Sarah doesn't want to talk to her, but we need to be careful. If Sarah gets suspicious and comes for an extended visit, Marcus, then we'll have to accelerate the timeline. The next recording, from a few weeks later, was even more explicit. Rebecca, I talked to the lawyer today. He says once we have the competency declaration, we can transfer all the property into our names without any interference. Marcus, and if she dies before then? Rebecca, even better. The new will is ironclad, and Sarah won't be able to contest. If from San Francisco. By the time she realizes what's happened, we'll have liquidated everything. Marcus, speaking of which, maybe we should increase her medication dosage. Dr. Patterson said too much could cause heart problems, especially with her existing condition. Rebecca, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Marcus, I'm just saying that if her heart gives out, it would solve a lot of problems. And who's going to question it? She's already got heart disease. It would look completely natural. Robert and I sat in stunned silence as we listened to them casually discussing murdering my mother for her inheritance. But there was more. In the final recording, from just a week before Mom's collapse, we heard the conversation that would seal their fate. Rebecca, she's getting too suspicious. Yesterday, she asked me directly if we were poisoning her. Marcus, what did you tell her? Rebecca, I told her she was being paranoid, that it was a symptom of her dementia. But Marcus, I think she's been recording us. I found that little device she used to use with David hidden under some papers in her room. Marcus, shit, did you? Check what was on it. Rebecca, I couldn't figure out how to work it. But we need to be more careful about what we say around her. Marcus, or we need to finish this tonight. I've got enough pills to make it look like she just took too much of her heart medication by accident. Rebecca, are you sure about this? Marcus, Rebecca, we're in too deep to back out now. If she goes to the authorities with whatever she's recorded, we're both going to prison. This is our only option. Rebecca, okay, but make sure it looks natural. And make sure you get rid of that recording device. The recording ended there. That night was when Mom collapsed in her front yard and was rushed to the hospital. Saved quite literally, by a neighbor who happened to be taking out trash and saw her fall. If that neighbor hadn't been there, if the paramedics had arrived, even 10 minutes later, Mom would have died that night. Marcus and Rebecca would have inherited everything. Sarah would have been completely cut out, and 2 murderers would have gotten away with the perfect crime. But Mom's hidden recording device had captured their entire plan, including their admission of attempted murder. The secret recordings changed everything. What had been a complex case of financial elder abuse became a clear-cut attempted murder prosecution. When the district attorney heard the recordings, Marcus and Rebecca's bail was revoked immediately. They were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, elder abuse, financial fraud, and a dozen other felonies. The media picked up the story, and it became a sensation. Stepchildren plot to murder mother for inheritance ran as headlines across the country. The case highlighted the growing problem of elder abuse and the vulnerability of seniors to financial exploitation by family members. But for me, it wasn't about media attention or legal victories. It was about my mother's vindication and recovery. With the drugs out of her system and proper medical care, Mom made a remarkable recovery. She was still dealing with legitimate heart issues, but her mental clarity returned completely. She was able to testify lucidly and powerfully at Marcus and Rebecca's trial. "They made me believe I was losing my mind," she told the court. "They convinced me that my own daughter didn't love me, that I was a burden to everyone around me. They isolated me from my friends, controlled every aspect of my life. And when I started to figure out what they were doing, they tried to kill me." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Marcus was sentenced to 25 years to life for attempted murder and elder abuse. Rebecca received 20 years for her role in the conspiracy. During the sentencing hearing, both of them finally showed their true colors. Gone was any pretense of caring about Mom or feeling remorse for their actions. "You destroyed our family," Rebecca screamed at Mom from the defendant's table. "David would be ashamed of you for choosing her over his real children." Marcus was even more vicious. "You're a pathetic old woman who was going to die anyway. We just tried to speed up the inevitable. At least we would have put your money to good use instead of wasting it on medical bills." Their outbursts were so shocking that even their own defense attorneys looked disgusted. Any lingering doubt about their guilt evaporated in the face of their cruel honesty. But the most satisfying moment came when the judge addressed them directly. "In 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty," Judge Martinez said. "You didn't just steal money. You stole years of a mother's life, destroyed her relationship with her daughter, and attempted to murder her for profit. The sentences I'm imposing reflect not just the crimes you committed, but the complete absence of remorse you've shown for your actions." After the trial, Mom and I had a long conversation about everything that had happened and everything we'd lost. "I'm so sorry, Mia," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I let them convince me that you didn't care about me. I let them destroy our relationship. Mom, you were being drugged and manipulated. None of this was your fault, but I should have trusted you. I should have known that my own daughter wouldn't abandon me." "You weren't abandoned," I said firmly. "I was always here. They just made sure you couldn't see it." We both cried then, for the lost years, for the trust that had been shattered and rebuilt, for the family that could have been if David's children had been capable of love instead of greed. But we also cried tears of relief and gratitude. We had each other back. The truth had finally come to light. Justice had been served. The financial recovery took months of legal work, but we eventually recovered most of Mom's stolen assets. The house was clear. Marcus had forged documents to take out a second mortgage, but since the signatures were fraudulent, the bank had to eat the loss. Mom's investment accounts were restored, and she even received a substantial settlement from the insurance company that had been defrauded. More importantly, Mom's health continued to improve. With proper medication, regular medical care, and the absence of constant stress and drugging, her heart condition stabilized. She wasn't going to live forever, but she had years ahead of her, good years. I took a leave of absence from my job in San Francisco to help Mom get back on her feet. We used this time to rebuild our relationship and address all the lies and manipulation that had driven us apart. I want you to know, Mom said one evening as we sat on her back porch, that I was always proud of you. Even when Marcus and Rebecca were telling me you didn't care about the family, deep down I knew they were wrong. You're exactly the person I raised you to be, strong, independent, successful. I never wanted you to sacrifice your career to take care of me. I would have. I said, if I'd known what was really happening, I would have moved back immediately. I know you would have. And that's why I'm so proud of you. You have a good heart, Sarah. You always have. We spent hours talking about everything. Her childhood in the Philippines, her early years in America, her relationship with my biological father, her marriage to David, her dreams for my future. It was like rediscovering each other after years of forced separation. But we also had to confront the reality of what Marcus and Rebecca had stolen from us. It wasn't just money, it was time. Precious years when we should have been close, when we should have been supporting each other, when we should have been building memories together. I can't get those years back, Mom said sadly. I can't undo the birthdays I missed, the achievements I didn't celebrate with you, the conversations we never had. But we can make sure we don't waste any more time, I replied. We have now. We have the future. That's when I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I decided not to return to my job in San Francisco. Instead, I would start my own biotech consulting company in Los Angeles, allowing me to maintain my career while being close to Mom. Are you sure? Mom asked when I told her, I don't want you to sacrifice your opportunities for me. I'm not sacrificing anything, I said. I'm choosing what matters most. I've learned that career success doesn't mean much if you don't have family to share it with. The transition wasn't easy. Starting my own company required long hours, financial risk, and a lot of uncertainty. But it also gave me the flexibility to spend time with Mom, to take her to doctor's appointments, to have lunch with her on random Tuesday afternoons. And surprisingly, the business thrived. My reputation in the biotech industry, combined with the flexibility of consulting work, created opportunities I'd never had as a traditional employee. Within 2 years, I was earning more than I had in San Francisco and had built a company that employed 12 people. But the real success was measured in smaller moments. Mom and I taking weekend trips to the coast, cooking traditional Filipino dishes together in her kitchen, attending art exhibits and cultural events around Los Angeles. We were rebuilding not just our relationship, but creating the life we should have had all along. About 18 months after Marcus and Rebecca's conviction, we received a call that will provide the final twist in this long saga. Robert Kim, Mom's original attorney, called to inform us that David's sister Margaret had passed away. I barely remembered Margaret. She'd lived in Phoenix and had minimal contact with the family after David's death. Margaret never married and had no children, Robert explained. According to her will, she's left her entire estate to the family of my beloved brother David Hayes Martin. What does that mean exactly? I asked. Well, technically, David's biological children would be the primary beneficiaries. But given their current legal status as convicted felons, and given that Margaret specifically mentions wanting her money to help David's family honor his memory, I think we have grounds to argue that the estate should go to Elena as David's widow. Margaret's estate was substantial, over $800,000 in investments, real estate, and savings. She'd been a successful businesswoman who'd lived modestly and invested wisely her entire life. But the most meaningful part of Margaret's bequest wasn't the money. It was a letter she'd written to be opened after her death. To Elena and Sarah, the letter began, I know we didn't stay in close touch after David's death, and I regret that now. But I want you to know that David spoke about you both constantly. He was so proud of Elena's strength and resilience, and he never stopped bragging about Sarah's academic achievements and career success. David was deeply troubled by Marcus and Rebecca's behavior over the years. He confided in me that he was worried about their character and their treatment of Elena and Sarah. He was planning to change his will to ensure that Elena would be protected, but his illness progressed too quickly. I followed the news about what Marcus and Rebecca did to your family, and I am horrified but not surprised. David will be devastated to know that his children were capable of such cruelty. This money is my attempt to right some of the wrongs that have been done to your family. Use it to build the life David would have wanted for you, one filled with love, security, and happiness. Sarah, David always said you reminded him of me when I was young, independent, intelligent, and determined to make your own way in the world. I hope this inheritance will give you the freedom to continue following your dreams. Elena, David loved you more than life itself. He would want you to be comfortable and secure in your remaining years. Please don't let the actions of his children taint the memory of your love for each other. With love and respect, Margaret Hayes. Mom cried when we read the letter together. David knew, she said through her tears. He knew what they were like. And he was trying to protect us. He did protect us, I said. Maybe not in the way he planned, but everything worked out the way it should have. The inheritance allowed Mom to make some changes that improved her quality of life dramatically. She renovated her house, creating a beautiful garden where she could spend her mornings reading and enjoying the sunshine. She hired a part-time housekeeper and cook, not because she needed care, but because it freed her time to pursue interests she'd neglected for years. She also established a scholarship fund at the local community college for immigrant women pursuing education while working to support their families. I know what it's like to work 3 jobs and still dream of something better, she explained. If I can help even one woman achieve her dreams, then all of this will have been worth it. 3 years have passed since that terrible day when I thought I was losing my mother and discovering how alone I was in the world. Today, as I sit writing this story, Mom is in her garden pruning rosebush while humming Filipino lullabies. She's 68 years old, healthy, happy, and surrounded by a community of friends who love and support her. The isolation that Marcus and Rebecca engineered has been completely reversed. Mom reconnected with her old friends from church and work, and she's made new friends through her volunteer activities and the Scholarship Foundation. Her house is frequently filled with visitors, laughter, and the smell of her incredible cooking. I've learned so much through this experience about the nature of family, manipulation, and resilience. The most important lesson is that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about love, loyalty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Marcus and Rebecca were technically family, but they never acted like it. Their relationship with Mom was purely transactional. What could they get from her? How could they use her? How could she serve their purposes? Real family is what Mom and I have rebuilt together. It's checking in on each other not because we have to, but because we want to. It's celebrating each other's successes without jealousy or competition. It's providing support during difficult times without keeping score or expecting repayment. The manipulation tactics that Marcus and Rebecca use are unfortunately common in cases of elder abuse. They isolated Mom from her support system, controlled her access to information, gaslighted her into questioning her own perceptions, and gradually assumed control over every aspect of her life. What made their plan so insidious was how reasonable each individual step seemed. Helping with finances after a spouse's death? Reasonable. Living with an aging parent to provide care and companionship? Reasonable. Managing medications for someone with multiple health conditions? Reasonable. It was only when you looked at the pattern over time that the true nature of their actions became clear. They weren't helping. They were systematically destroying Mom's autonomy and stealing her resources. The warning signs were there, but they were subtle and easy to explain away. Mom's increasing isolation from friends and family, her growing financial difficulties despite having adequate resources, confusion and memory problems that seemed inconsistent with her diagnosed conditions the way Marcus and Rebecca controlled access to information and communications. Their positioning of themselves as indispensable caregivers while actually providing minimal care, their immediate assumption of authority over Mom's medical and financial decisions. If you have an elderly family member, please be aware of these red flags. Elder abuse is far more common than most people realize, and it's often perpetrated by family members who appear to be providing care and support. But this story isn't just about abuse and manipulation. It's also about resilience, truth, and the power of love to overcome even the most devastating betrayals. Mom's decision to secretly record conversations in her house probably saved her life. Her instinct that something was wrong, even while being heavily drugged, was what ultimately exposed Marcus and Rebecca's plan. My decision to trust Mom's concerns, even when they seemed paranoid or inconsistent, was crucial to uncovering the truth. If I had dismissed her fears as symptoms of illness or aging, she might not be alive today. The legal system, while imperfect, ultimately provided justice. The recordings Mom made were admissible evidence. The financial fraud was traceable, and the medical evidence of drugging was conclusive. Marcus and Rebecca are now serving long prison sentences, and they'll be elderly themselves before they're eligible for release. Today, my consulting business employs 15 people and has become one of the most respected biotech consulting firms on the West Coast. But more importantly, I wake up every morning knowing that Mom is safe, healthy, and happy just 20 minutes away. Have lunch together at least twice a week. We take weekend trips to places we've never been. We cook together, laugh together, and sometimes just sit quietly together, enjoying each other's company. The relationship we have now is deeper and more authentic than anything we had before this crisis. Going through trauma together, fighting for each other, and rebuilding trust from the ground up has created a bond that feels unbreakable. Mom has become something of a local celebrity through her advocacy work with elder abuse prevention. She speaks at community centers, senior living facilities, and professional conferences about her experience and how to recognize the warning signs of financial exploitation. I want other families to learn from what happened to us, she says. If my story can prevent even one person from going through what we went through, then something good will have come from all that pain. Her bravery in sharing her story publicly has helped law enforcement and social services improve their response to elder abuse cases. The recordings she made have been used as training materials to help professionals recognize manipulation tactics and believe victims when they report concerns. We've also worked with legislators to strengthen elder abuse laws and improve protections for seniors. The Elena's Law package, named after my mother, has been adopted in several states and includes provisions for mandatory reporting of suspected elder abuse by medical professionals stronger, penalties for financial exploitation of seniors better, protection for elderly victims who report abuse by family members required, documentation and oversight for power of attorney arrangements, enhanced training for law enforcement on elder abuse. Investigations. The legal changes won't bring back the years we lost or undo the trauma we experience, but they might prevent other families from going through similar ordeals. On a personal level, this experience has completely changed my perspective on what matters in life. Career success, financial achievement, professional recognition. These things are nice, but they're meaningless without genuine human connections. I used to think that moving away from family, building an independent life, and focusing on career advancement were signs of maturity and success. Now I understand that true success is about balance, pursuing your dreams, while maintaining strong relationships with the people who matter most. I'm dating someone now, a wonderful man named Michael, who works as a social worker specializing in family counseling. He understands the importance of family relationships because he sees the consequences when they break down. Our relationship is built on shared values of honesty, loyalty, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Mom loves Michael, and he loves her. They spend time together even when I'm not around, and he's become like a son to her. It's the kind of organic, loving family relationship that can't be forced or faked. The complete opposite of what Marcus and Rebecca pretended to offer. We're talking about marriage, and when that happens, Mom will be central to our wedding planning and celebration. She'll finally get to be the mother of the bride she always dreamed of being. And I'll finally get to share one of life's most important moments with the person who matters most to me. As I finish writing this story, I want to leave you with some final thoughts about family truth and the importance of trusting your instincts. If you suspect that an elderly family member is being abused or exploited, please don't ignore those suspicions. Elder abuse is a crime, and it's often a progressive crime that gets worse over time. What starts as financial manipulation can escalate to physical abuse, medical neglect, and even murder. If you're concerned about an elderly person's well-being, document everything you observe: changes in behavior, financial situations, living conditions. Maintain direct contact with the person if possible. Without going through potential abusers, report concerns to adult protective services, law enforcement, or medical professionals. Trust the elderly person's own reports of abuse. Even if they seem confused or inconsistent, seek legal help if you suspect financial exploitation or fraud. If you're an elderly person who feels like you're being manipulated or exploited, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Try to maintain connections with friends and family outside of your immediate caregivers. Keep records of your concerns. Even if others tell you you're being paranoid, seek help from professionals who don't have a financial interest in your situation. Remember that real family members want what's best for you, not what's best for them. Most importantly, remember that it's never too late to rebuild relationships, seek justice, or start over. Mom was 65 years old when she finally broke free from Marcus and Rebecca's control. I was 32 when I learned to prioritize family over career advancement. There's no expiration date on positive change. The truth has a power that manipulation can't overcome indefinitely. Lies require constant maintenance and energy to sustain. Truth just has to wait for the right moment to emerge. In our case, that moment came through Mom's secret recordings and her brave decision to document what was happening to her. But truth can emerge in many ways: through careful investigation, through the courage to speak up, through the persistence of people who refuse to accept comfortable lies. If you're watching this video because you're dealing with similar family issues, please know that you're not alone. There are resources available. There are people who will believe you, and there is hope for justice and healing. If you're watching because you love dramatic family stories, I hope you'll also remember that these situations happen to real people every day. Behind every story of family betrayal are real human beings dealing with real pain, real loss, and real consequences. But I also hope you'll remember that love can triumph over manipulation, that truth can overcome deception, and that families can heal even from the most devastating betrayals. Mom, and I lost several years to Marcus and Rebecca's lies and manipulation. But we've gained something too: a deeper appreciation for each other, a stronger bond than we ever had before, and the knowledge that our love for each other can survive anything. That's worth more than any inheritance, any career success, or any material achievement. That's the real treasure that no one can steal from us. Thank you for listening to our story. If it resonated with you, please share it with others who might need to hear it. And remember, family is about love, not blood. Choose your family wisely and fight for the relationships that truly matter. Where are you watching from? Have you ever experienced family manipulation or betrayal? How did you overcome it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life family drama stories. Until next time, remember that the truth always comes out eventually. Sometimes it just takes a mother's love and a hidden recording device to make it happen.